Bruce, all right, who wants a buck? 500, 500, give me 100. I'd love to see that. I'd love to see that happen. Because then he has to stay here, right? Then he would have to stay here. How many people want to see Bruce stay here? Here, here. I'm working on him. I'm working on him.
Is cheap real estate here?
Relatively speaking.
Go for it.
Okay.
Yeah, live streams. Okay, well, we'll tackle that first.
Okay.
If you want to take pictures, video, live stream, go for it. You're welcome to do that. In fact, I would encourage you to do that. We're not live streaming this one. We live streamed yesterday, but you're allowed to do that. I'm absolutely, the whole point of this is to share this out there. So if you want to do that, please be my guest. And if you need a bathroom, we have male and female bathroom only. You'll find them down the hall here. Make sure that if you need a different one, I'm sorry, that's a different event. What's that? You have your equity cards. Oh my gosh, we started this already. Yeah. Well, then this panel's in trouble, aren't we? Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you all coming out here to Red Deer on a Tuesday night. Who's doing a date night tonight? Let's say a couple right there. We got some more date nights here. Yeah. John, is this a date night for you? I gotta photobomb this thing. Hey, look at this. Ooh, I can't stand in front of that speaker. Yeah. God said no. Don't do it. Thank you all for being here. This is our second of the 3 events that we're doing on this. This is our public input with the 3 gentlemen here. What we want to do is get your information. You've all been preached to a million times. You all know why an Alberta needs to be independent, and you're starting to look at the hows now. But now you can be part of that process. Because quite frankly, it's your Alberta. It's going to be your constitution. So why not get involved in it? So first, a round of applause for all of you for coming out to do exactly that. My name is Jason Lavigne, host of The Lavigne Show. Anybody watch The Lavigne Show? Yeah. Right on. It's more and more each time. The rest of you can leave now. No, go check it out. There's cards on the table. Check it out. We're on all the platforms. We do all the interviews. We've had these guys on a couple times now. And if you caught it this morning, we had the premiere on as well. And I think she's now a professional dodgeball player, if you ask me. Because boy, can she dodge those questions. Doesn't quite answer them, but doesn't quite say no. Did you check it out? Ooh, we'll probably get into that one too. How many people heard about this on X? Really? Facebook? You heard about this event on Facebook?
Oh, X.
X for you? Facebook? CBC? There's never a hand on that one. For some reason, they don't cover us, John. And what we're trying to do here is really get you engaged. Because a lot of you are already decided. Is there anybody in here that's undecided? Yeah, normally pretty decided. I better say back here. Because quite frankly, we know why we need to do this. I don't know where I'm getting that from.
Maybe I move it a little bit over here.
How about that?
There we go.
I gotta get behind here. But what I want to do now is introduce this panel to you. So your far left, and don't hold it against him, we got Dennis Kalma, and then right beside him, we've got Matt Rowley, and then right here is Bruce Party, and I'll be the moderator of the questions. Don't worry, I'm not going to moderate the questions. I'm just going to do my best to get them all to them. And if you have any more, drop them up over here. So if you don't mind, you got your mic. Remember, you got to turn it to the right, because that's right. And go ahead and introduce yourself.
Can you guys hear me all right?
I think that's back to me. We can turn ourselves off until we're on.
Okay. Hopefully I don't make too many rude noises. So my name is Dennis Kalma. I've been involved with the independence movement pretty heavily in the last year or so. What got me started actually is the upset at the last election. But long term, I've been upset with Alberta's place in Canada since the NDP back in the 80s. So I've been involved, as a lot of you know, I was the principal author of the Valley of Freedom, the fiscal plan for an independent Alberta. And we will be updating that in the next little while to cover some updates that we think are important. In terms of the constitutional discussion, I've been involved with the APP as editor for their draft of the Constitution, which is based on a constitutional republic similar to the United States. And a lot of merit to that. And if you would have asked me back in December, what should we be doing? It should be get this thing out there, get it in front of everybody, and let's tell people what the Constitution is going to be in the future. As I told people yesterday, my thinking has matured in the last little while, due in no small part to these two fine gentlemen here. I realize that the problem is more nuanced and more complex, and there are more than one ways to solve the means of governing a country and the constitution that underpins it. And so I'm now at the point where saying, no, this is something that the people of Alberta must decide. They must choose an approach, one of the three, or maybe another, to determine how the country should be run in the future. There are three good models here. All of them can work, all of them can fail. So I think tonight is a example, or the point of tonight is to answer your questions, to give our perspectives, to take our three different models and describe them, how they would solve certain issues, and get everyone to understand, all with the goal that more informed people can do a better job of persuading others to sign up and vote in favor of us departing. So look forward to the conversation.
And it's fun to have two friends to talk about this with too. We were saying earlier. Okay, sorry, Jason, you're included as well. Two friends in a distant relation. No, I don't. But no, it's fun to have people that you can actually disagree with and yet be friends, because that's actually one of the things that's been lost in Canada today. And I got involved in this whole thing because I have 10 kids and I want to make sure that they have a future, that they're able to do whatever they want to do, build what they want to do, and be all that they can be. And I see that being robbed away. And for me, the big change was actually I went and lived in the East, and I realized, I did my doctorate out there, I realized that they have a different culture there. It's not bad, they're allowed to have their own culture, but ours is different. And so we're not going to get to a point where we want the same things. And that's why you can't get unity no matter how hard you try. So we need to have a separation of ways. But for me, the big thing is I want to change as little as possible. Things do need to change. I'm all for a Westminster style government. What Canada has now, I said yesterday, and I've said it often, is actually a French Republic dressed up in a Silence of the Lambs type skin suit of Westminster. So we need to strip away everything that Pierre Elliott Trudeau did to break our country and return to a time when it was good. Most of us are old enough to look back and say, I remember when Canada worked, when Alberta actually could move forward. But things like the National Energy Program and the changes that have happened since Pierre Trudeau's Constitution have broken Canada beyond repair. So we need to do something to change that, and that's why I'm here.
Sure. Okay, can you hear me okay? As Jason has described, I am the interloper from Ontario. Besides making a whole lot of really great Albertan friends, I'm involved in this because Alberta has a moment now to do something that rarely comes along in the life of a civilization. You can save yourselves, and you might even end up saving this country, but moreover, you are actually in a position to literally save Western civilization. Because you'll all be aware of the fact that Western countries as a group, and not all in the same way and not at the same rate, but they're all unraveling. And you have a chance to turn the page and start again and decide what it is that you think should govern your new country, and for that matter, your new civilization. By that I don't mean that you throw things out like your culture and your traditions and all of that. No. But what you do have to start again with are the systems that govern Canada and the West and Alberta. I've been saying it this way: Alberta needs to escape Canada. You've got to get out of Canada, but you also have to get Canada out of Alberta. And there is a lot of Canada inside Alberta. That's going to be one of your main challenges. So I want to just bring to your attention off the top two of the difficulties or dangers in writing or designing a new constitution for a new country. The first one is this: it is natural for people to want to envision the society that they want to have. You know, how should people behave? What should it look like? How do we want it to work? And then take that vision and try and manufacture a constitution that produces it. Okay? That is the kind of thing you're trying to escape. By that I mean, that's a lot like central planning. Governments get visions, goals, objectives, and then they try to manufacture that result. They're managing people, they're managing laws, they're managing economies so that they get to where they want to go. Okay? Let's not plan your society. Instead, the alternative is to identify the principles upon which your constitution is built. You get a document and a system of governance that reflects those principles. Then you do it, and then you let it run. And then things evolve. And people make the most of their lives, and then you'll find out what your society will become. That's the first thing. The second thing is this: there is one weakness that all written constitutions have, even the best ones, and that is that they are written in words, because words are inevitably ambiguous. You can never write a constitution whose meaning is clear in every single situation. And the fact that words are ambiguous, or at least that you can make them ambiguous, means that the danger is that the power is held in those people who have power. Governments, bureaucrats, courts take those words and then they tell us all what they're going to mean now. And that means that your constitution is not supreme at all. It's the people who are supreme. So it's not enough just to take the document and write down things that you want. Like we want to write to fill in the blank. Because the belief is if you write that down, you have right to bear arms. That means we have the right to bear arms. No, it doesn't. That's not what it means. It's not what it's going to mean. Because the most important question is not what, but who. Who gets to decide what the Constitution means? And so this is a real design problem. The what has to be there, it's very important, but it's not the end of the story. It is not enough just to write down the sentiments about what we all would like to see. It's got to be designed so that the people who are doing this are relatively powerless to do anything except obey the words in the document. Over to you.
What he said. Yeah. You guys are awesome, okay? I've been going through all of these, kind of grouping them together. There's some stuff that's very similar, and there's some stuff that's brand new that they haven't heard before. So give yourselves a round on this one. And Bruce, because you just kind of touched on this in your opening, let's get that one out of the way right now.
Okay.
How do you get Canada out of Alberta?
How do you get Canada out of Alberta? Yeah. Well, I think a lot of the answer to that question lies in your Constitution, whatever it's going to be. And the one thing it should not be is a reproduction of the Canadian Constitution. People are going to be inclined to want what they're familiar with. But if they do that, then this whole project will have been for nothing. And you will have Canada inside Alberta. The fact of the matter is that Alberta has a governing system right now, today, that is very Canadian. You have a Westminster system of government inside Alberta. You have in Alberta a managerial state. You've got to get rid of the managerial state in Alberta. You have to. So I had a debate with Jason Kenney online a few months ago, and he said one thing during that debate that made me think, I wonder if he's right. And if he is, then we got a problem. And the one thing he said was, the people of Alberta will continue to demand a full service welfare state. If that is true, then this is all for nothing. You've got to get your fellow Albertans to understand that the greatest threat to their liberty is their full service welfare state.
I just wanted a little support from you on that. All right, I won't bring that question to you guys because, well, first you heard it, and
I hear here at Westminster.
but what I'll do is I'll bring it for all of you. But we'll start with Dennis and work your way down here. When do you expect to have a working draft, and will there be public input?
So, working drafts, we've actually got several working drafts. I've got one sitting in my computer right now that was written and published within APP on December 12th of last year. I think it's a pretty good draft. It's a model I like. It's different than what these two gentlemen proposed. But that's not the issue. The discussion is, and as Bruce rightly said, is who decides? And the most important question for Albertans to decide when we go independent is, what is the Constitution? What is the basis under which we run our country? That cannot be left to government. That cannot be left to a small group of intellectuals hiding in a room somewhere. It has to be chosen by the people. So my thinking has changed. I now believe that we should be having a constitutional conference. The conference should be given all three models with pros and cons. Here's what's good, here's what's not so good about each of them. And then that group of people made up of, some politicians, yes, some academics, but regular people like the ones in this room, who have input, who have suggestions, who like things, who don't like things, and ultimately will draft the Constitution. Then the most critical step is then it gets put to the people to decide. Then we all need to vote on that, and we all have to buy in and say, yep, that's the way we want to run our country. And to Bruce's point earlier about if we really want a full service welfare state, we have to say that we don't in there. If we put in there that we're going to take care of you and guarantee basic income forever, and you'll never have to want a day in your life, well, that's not the country I want to be in. I want a country where if I work hard and I make hard, I get to keep those proceeds. If you don't want to work, I'm sorry, that's not my problem. Yeah. So I think we have to put that in there. The conference is the way to do it. It must be a broader group, and we must let the people ultimately decide.
It's important to realize too, like we said yesterday, the Alberta government will be responsible. When we vote yes, let's leave, it's actually up to the Alberta government to sort this out. And that's why we need to make sure that we're not just saying, okay, well, once it's done, we don't need to worry about it. We need to be thinking about it now, and then we need to be encouraging our government to see our point of view when it comes to things like a constitutional conference. There's every possibility, if we don't step up and stay engaged, that after we vote to leave, the government just says, oh, well, we're going to do exactly what we want to do, and God forbid it could be an NDP government, right? You have to think through every bit and make sure that now you're engaged in a healthy way. We all love to shout at politicians and tell them how bad we think they are. But the old saying, you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar, and maybe more with a pile of manure, but that's another story. But you need to make sure you're engaging with people now and helping to get your ideas across to one another, to anybody who might have some influence, but also to the people who are going to be actually guiding the process. It's not us up here. We are hoping to influence that, but it will be your Alberta government that is shaping this process.
That's 100% right. 100%. So what we're doing here is we're trying to exercise political power. We're trying to develop the idea in enough people that the new Constitution should be a certain way. But if we were all to agree in this room that it should be a certain way, that doesn't matter unless those people in power think that they have to listen to us. So what we're trying to do here is to engage in that process. The people in power at the time that this happens are the ones that can decide how it's going to go. And they have to think that they better do it this way, whatever that way that is, or they're going to get into political trouble. If they think that they have carte blanche to do what they want, they will do something else, guaranteed. They will do something that reproduces the system that gave them power in the first place. Okay, so they have to be very scared of the results for them if they don't adopt the ideas that have reached a certain critical mass of people. That's what we're trying to do here. For example, people have said, and this is before the Constitution gets decided, but in this process, people have said, well, we win the referendum, and then we have to enter into negotiations with the government of Canada, and the government of Canada, if they don't play ball, then, well, that's fine. We can just issue a unilateral declaration of independence. And yes, that's a possibility. But the only person who can do that is the Premier. And if you have a Premier in power at that moment who doesn't want to do that, then that is off the table. That's why this comes down as much to politics, or maybe more to politics, than it does to legal text. The legal text is important for sure, in the end result. But getting there is a political question.
There's an AGM coming up, yep. And we call them cold water brews for a reason, and that reminds me there's cold water over here if you guys want. I know I need it. And he's absolutely correct, because in the absence of pressure from the public, they go to political pressure or personal pressure. They go do their own thing. So public pressure is by far the biggest mover of that needle. So thanks for you guys being here. We'll start with Matt on this one. If all three of your constitutions were rejected, what other style of constitution would you choose? Matt.
Oh, let's just go full medieval then and do a feudal system. No, I think honestly what we have here are, by and large, modern constitutional arrangements. There certainly are other ones. I guess we could have a theocracy with an Ayatollah, but that's not really a good idea. There are other constitutional arrangements in the world, but what we have here broadly are the two main systems that many countries use around the world, plus Bruce's utterly unique, utterly special. We won't talk about the short bus, but it's actually a very interesting one. And honestly, if I was just starting a country from scratch, I'd be very interested, but we're working in reality. And where we are is that we have these basic modern constitutional styles that people use, and especially in recent history, modern history, when countries have been formed, they've adopted constitutions along these models. So that's why we're here talking about these ones and not others. But if you want to make me king in a feudal monarchy system, I'd be happy with that. I'll be your king.
Yeah, I largely agree with Matt. The guts of it is, well, what do you want? If you sort of say, if none of these three work, I go, well, why don't they work? What's missing? And I can go to the German system of basic law and say, oh, these basic rights and law elements can never be changed forever, ever, ever. They did that to keep another Adolf Hitler from showing up. Good plan. Or the Swiss law with their emphasis on referenda and so forth. Those are all variations that fit within all three of these. And so you say there's a specific element that you aren't covering, then I think we can have a good conversation. If you say, throw the bums out, we want something totally different, I think we're out of options, other than the theocracy, and of course me as king in that case.
He'd be a great high priest.
Or you could also have anarchy. No constitution at all. But the problem with anarchy is that very quickly you get somebody who has the most power, and then they establish a new system that you didn't want in the first place. So that's no answer. But I agree with Matthew's description of these three models. Those two are the two main variations of constitutions that you see in the Western world. And the one that I'm just suggesting, you will see nowhere in the real Western world. And the reason for that is the Western world is coming apart. And so for my money, the thing you do not want to reproduce are the existing systems. Now, both of these models are based upon a really neat idea. I'm partial to the Republican version. The Republican version is what the Americans established, and established very well at the time. At the time of the American Revolution and the new Constitution, it was, of course, revolutionary. It was different than what existed. And that model was based upon the idea of checks and balances. Right? It's a long evolutionary thing. But the whole idea is you don't want power concentrated in one person or one office. You want to diffuse power, and you want to set up different branches, the legislature, the executive, and the courts. So they check and balance each other. And that's a neat idea. And it worked for a good while. It does not work now. And the reason it does not work now is that these three branches have decided that they're all pretty much on the same page. They all believe in the same thing. And that thing is that the state should manage society. Now, I don't mean that they don't have their quarrels between them, the legislature and the executive, or the courts and the legislature and so on. They have their little battles, and they have their court cases, sure. But overall, they are cooperating with each other so as to enable state management of the people. So checks and balances do not work. My model is not a checks and balances model. It is, well, I'll go into that maybe a little later, but it's a flipped default model based upon the singular idea that the people must be free. Okay.
Good start. 3 questions in and we got Hitler already. Last night it was much later in the night. Here's the next one here. And this is a good one to kind of put your head around how do we get to the next step. I believe we need to protect our nation from government control and overreach into our personal lives. How do you foresee the transition of a society addicted to socialism to one embracing individual freedom and responsibility? Let's start with Bruce.
Well, so it sounds like a question of culture and psychology rather than constitutional design. And to be quite honest, I'm not sure what the answer to that question is. How do you change the minds of your fellows to reject the idea that the state should be looking after them? This goes back to my comment about whether or not a critical mass of Albertans will still want a full-service welfare state. How do you change their minds? Well, I don't know. I mean, one person at a time, I think. But that runs alongside the constitutional question. The constitutional question for us is, how do you design a constitution that does not allow a welfare state? Right? So, to be clear, the constitution that we have in Canada and the one that they have in the US does not prescribe a welfare state. an administrative state, a managerial state. But nor does it prohibit one. And if your constitution does not prohibit one, that is what you will get, guaranteed. So in terms of constitutional design, you've got to have a constitution that is, whose architecture does not allow for a government to take the mandate of providing for the common good. Governments should not provide for the common good, the general welfare, the public interest. Here's why. As soon as they do, they seize the power to place individual rights and interests aside, because those interests get in the way of what they think the common good consists of. Immediately, what you've done is you have undermined the idea of individual freedom. Those two things conflict. And so for my money, the Constitution has to prohibit the mandate for common good.
We'll go to Dennis next because people are familiar with that system.
Yeah, so I think we're all in alignment up here. Small the government is good. We don't want to have a nanny state. And I actually think in some respects, the problem of changing in Alberta is smaller than perhaps we fear. I walk around this room this evening. We were in Edmonton yesterday. I've had a number of meetings, and I think everyone, and maybe even every conversation, people say, I'm tired of the government doing this. I'm tired of the government living that, removing that, and so forth. I had a conversation about a glue I couldn't get because it's now prohibited for my own safety with a couple of you earlier this evening. So I think people are disgusted with the current state, and more critically, they're disgusted with the money it costs that has to be extracted from their pocket. So the kind of controls you see in the model I espouse is much more of limits on what the government can spend, limits on rights. In other words, the rights are inalienable, to go down that kind of road, and basically try and control what the government can do. Now, Bruce is right, is governments tend to try and overreach, they'll stretch it, they'll pull it, and ultimately I think every constitution up here could fail. If we, the people, get complacent and let government do that and don't show up to vote and pick idiots to run the country, we are going to be in the same state no matter which model we pick.
Yep.
So I think I'm more optimistic, and I think we have more of this under control than maybe we fear. But it will be a change. There will be people who will be negatively impacted by what we're doing here. And we have to be prepared to deal with that. That's a reality.
Thank you, Dennis. Made a bit of an argument for anarchy there. Go ahead, Matt.
I think it is an important point. Just like these guys said, constitutionally you can't say, well, we can't have a welfare state or something. And we are in a world where a lot of people depend on the government. It's part of why I say we should change as little as possible to start with. We need to make sure that our Constitution doesn't enshrine the welfare state. Funny enough, Westminster, the old system, was designed so that the House of Commons had the money control because they weren't the government. And so when the government came to them and said, I would like to do some stupid project like allow drug addicts to have a place where they can go and do drugs in front of your kids, they would say, no, you can't have the money. The House of Commons was responsible for saying no to the government. But then we flipped it on its head in this modern iteration, and now the inmates are in charge of the asylum, and they get to decide they want to do something with money and then turn around and vote the taxes on you to do it. That's crazy. So we can do, as Dennis said, fiscal restraints. We can control constitutionally how much the government is able to take from you. I said yesterday that the principles of the Glorious Revolution were life, liberty, and property. And your property includes your money, and the government actually doesn't have the right to just take it from you. They have to have a good reason that you consent to. So we have the tools, but we have to realize that we do have a welfare state. And you have to bring people on a journey. You can't just say, hey, tomorrow we're going to be independent, and oh, by the way, all of the supports that you get from the government, they're history. Because guess what? People won't vote for it. Rightly so, because there's a lot of people that, as Bruce said, are dependent. Sorry, I called you Bruce. Dennis. As Dennis said, are dependent. We switched our positions, and it's thrown me off. You have people who are utterly dependent on the government, and no, it's not right. You have 20% of Canadians somehow employed by the government. If that doesn't make you climb the walls, then maybe you have a problem. We need to reduce all of those figures, but it's going to take time. You have to bring people with you, or you fracture society. Especially, we do have to get back to the point where we realize communities care for people. The government really, at the core, should defend us and have justice. Bruce and I actually agree on this subject. They need to be the ones keeping the army going and keeping the police and the courts going, and about that, everything else has been extra that's added. But we start where we're at, not in some sort of a where we want to be grand land, and we have to move there over time.
Everybody look up for that? It's really a tough one. It's like, where do we go from here? What have we changed? And I'm just going to throw this one in here because it just came up, and it kind of dovetails on this one. Because this is what you're talking about, Matt. So maybe I'll throw this to Dennis and Bruce. We'll start with Dennis. How do you work with people already on programs like AISH, people already deemed not able to work?
Well, it's a reality. It's probably not strictly a constitutional question, but it's probably lands in what kind of people do we want to be, what kind of culture we want to be, and how we want to treat our citizens. The reality is some of us are healthy and able to be prosperous and do things and really make money and all this good stuff. Some are less able. They have difficulties. And if we want to be the kind of compassionate nation I think we want to be, then we have to care for those people. Not at the absolute minimum possible. We have to take good care of them and make sure that they are maintained in a state that's human and correct and proper. And so that is also a role of government for those people that need that kind of thing. Now, I'm going to go back to the value of freedom conversation, which is one of the things that helps all of this is the fact we got the money. The reality is we're going to be in a financial surplus, a substantial one, I think at least $25 billion a year, and we can certainly support the kind of spending required to deal with people who are disabled or have other needs. So I think it's possible. Strictly, it's not a constitutional question, but it's something we want as a culture.
As Matthew, or maybe both of you said, there's an awful lot of things that the three of us agree about. There are some things we disagree about, and this is one of them. My Constitution has a default, a different default than the defaults in the other two models. The default in the other two models is this. The state has power over everything. It has subject matter jurisdiction over everything. When I say the state, I mean all the bits of the state together. The provinces and the federal government, the legislatures, the bureaucrats, and the courts. All those bits together have unlimited subject matter jurisdiction. They can do anything except we put in exceptions, or we claim to. What are those exceptions? Well, for example, your charter rights. You can do anything except violate your freedom of speech. Now, sometimes that's real and sometimes it's not. Okay. But the problem is the default. The default is anything unless you can fit yourself into an exception. And on that basis, the reach of government grows and grows and grows and grows because it starts unlimited. So what I'm suggesting is that we flip that default. It goes like this. The state has power to do nothing except. Now, what are the exceptions? What do you want the state to do? Why have a state? Well, I've been suggesting 3 things in the list of exceptions. Number 1, keep the peace. You don't want violence. You want to be able to call the police when somebody steals your car. Number 2, resolve disputes. You know, your neighbor builds a fence on your backyard. You want some place to go, like a court. Number 3, protect the country. You want a military, you want borders. 1, 2, 3, keep the peace, resolve disputes, protect the country. And not very much else. What's not on that list? Welfare, health, education, and all kinds of other things that are characteristics of a full-service welfare state. I do not agree that the government should be responsible for paying anybody anything. I agree that society should be compassionate. But when governments pay money to people in need, nobody is being compassionate. Nobody is being compassionate. Here's why. The government's not being compassionate because the government has no money. The government is taking money from other people and passing it on. That's not compassionate. That's theft. And the people who are being taxed are not being compassionate because they're paying their taxes under compulsion. They don't have any choice. There is no compassion in that action. There should be no payments by government to anyone for anything. Society should be compassionate. I put it this way. There are a lot of people, hopefully, in society that believe that people in need should be cared for. I agree with that. 100%. The people who agree with that should do it. And our support systems should be outside the state. They used to be, largely. Community, church, family, and so on. And the reason that we don't have much of that left anymore is because the state occupies the field. So you get the state out of that business altogether. No questions, no exceptions. 1, 2, 3. If it's not in the list, they cannot do it. Constitutionally, they have no power to do it. It cannot be done. And if you have that kind of system, then people and society will fill in the gap.
Jason, let me say one thing.
No.
By the way,
I'll be compassionate. Go ahead.
you don't have to wait for independence on this one. The government doesn't have to be the answer for you or for your communities. You can build this now. So don't wait for independence to start making the community, your family, friends, your church, the center of existence instead of the government.
All right, so this is post-vote, the second one. How would government be formed? What is the process to establish a new government? And what kind of protections are best for preventing corruption? And can we add incentives for participating, i.e. voting? Is it too much government overreach to have mandatory voting? Let's go ahead, sir. Let's go Dennis and work our way down.
You want to start with me? Is that the plan?
Yeah.
Yeah, my colleagues and I differ somewhat. I actually like the idea of you don't show up to vote, you get essentially a parking ticket. I think if we're going to depend on people for referenda, we got to have people showing up. And not just showing up, hey, I don't know anything about this, let me just check some boxes at random. Right. And that's incumbent then on all of us to understand the issues, understand what's being done. And everything from, I think, education systems should be teaching civics. I think people should be taught from an early age. How does our government work? What is your role in it? What does it mean? Why are you voting on this silly referendum? Why is that more important than a bunch of crazy people in ivory towers in Edmonton making all these decisions. Why is that better? So we have to be educated. That's definitely part of it. Now, in terms of actually getting there, the first part of the question is, if we win independence, how do we get there? As has been said earlier, Danielle Smith is still in power the day after. And that transitional time will last for a while until we can complete the Constitutional Conference, until that is enacted, and I don't like parties, but until people who are willing to run for office under the new structure can form themselves, set up their affairs, we can have an election, we get the legislature set up, we get the courts populated, and all that stuff in place, and then that new government begins to operate. So there's a period of time where we're in transition, and we will have some frustrations, and I guarantee it. There'll be things that don't go right, and we want to make this decision now, and the military guys that are working with me on the transition plan, they want to start buying F-35s. Like right now, we have 10. So I think things like that will come up, we have to deal with them, and there will be some challenges to it. But really, 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 the most important thing is we do not want to make decisions about how our country will operate except for by means of the legally elected legislature that's driven and governed by the new Constitution, whatever it is.
Yeah, and I think the important thing to realize is slow is the safe speed. We all are very excited to be fully independent, fully shot at Canada, fully done with all of the ridiculousness that we've been through for, quite frankly, 120 years. But since Pierre Elliott Trudeau, it's gotten real bad.
Yeah.
But if we go too fast, we will regret it. I love to point out that there was a lot of people who were really frustrated with the czars. And along came the Bolsheviks and they said, we'll solve the problem for you. And the next thing you knew, everyone woke up and went, wait, this is even worse. So if we go slow and we're thoughtful and careful, if we realize that we do need a government, government is actually basically a good. The question is how much government, where you get into whether it's bad or not. So we need to recognize we do need a government. It does need to be healthy. There are structures that we can look to from the past and even in our present in Alberta that have worked very well. Most of us are probably pretty satisfied with how elections go in Alberta, and you don't think, oh, that's corrupt and it was stolen. So we have structures in place that do work. We don't need to reinvent the wheel on those things.
I do not think you can do this incrementally. This is cold turkey. If you do it slowly, it will never be done.
That's right.
Because people will resist. So the foundational principle in my model is that people must be free. Now, question. What does that mean? My answer would be this. You are a free person when you are not being coerced by somebody else. That is, you are not subject to the force or threats of force of other people. That means your fellows and the state. So, if that's what it means to be free, and the whole purpose is to be in a country that is free, that has to be the first rule in the Constitution. No use of force or threats of force by anybody. Now, a couple of exceptions. Somebody comes after you, of course, you get to use force in self-defense, and so on. But maybe the more important exception is, well, if that's going to be a rule, a law, well then, of course, you need the state to enforce it. And that means they can use force for that. But that, with respect to rules that affect your behavior, that is all of describing a situation in which the state has no constitutional authority to use force except for the purpose, at least against citizens, except for the purpose of making sure you're not using force. Okay? Now just imagine what that means they cannot do. They cannot make any other laws governing your behavior. They cannot require you to pay taxes. They cannot require you to wear a bicycle helmet when you ride. They cannot require you to do this and to do that. All those things that they are requiring us to do right now are off the table. And why is this necessary? Because the Constitution is based upon a principle. And the principle is people are free. What does that mean? It means they're not subject to force. If you mean what you say that means, there's got to be a constitutional rule that says no force. Otherwise, you don't mean what you say. Okay? But let's go to the voting. If we say, well, but it's important for people to participate in the democratic process, and therefore there will also be a rule that people are required to vote, you have just broken your principle. You are now using state force to require people to do things they don't want to do. That doesn't make sense. Okay, you either mean it or you don't.
Just a reminder, the cold water is over there. I want to jump into this one too because we had a question that kind of sets you up nicely, and then we'll do Matt, Bruce, and Dennis on this one. I want the people to have the choice on everything, i.e. Switzerland and all the people's choices. How can we implement this government, ditch the government we have? So direct democracy, extremely direct democracy. Matt?
So that sounds great. Until all of us are continually involved in politics all the time. How many of you like thinking about politics every moment of the day? I do because I'm weird. The average person doesn't. That's actually why we have representative democracy, is we say, you know what? We don't want to have a decision on every little thing. We're going to elect someone we trust, and we're going to send them to do the basic job. Now, if there's big things, constitutional amendments, adjustments that are going to affect how the country functions going forward, yeah, we want to make a decision on that. But if we have direct democracy, it means that we all spend our time worrying about things that we don't want to know about. The best government is the one you don't know is there because so little is happening that is dramatic and is going to destroy what you hold dear or value most. So direct democracy, to a certain extent, is good. What we're doing with the referendum is great. It actually will become tiresome. They've tried it before in history, and people got fed up having to vote all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree, but perhaps for a different reason. I mean, in addition to that, I do agree with that argument. But if you have direct democracy, then you are in danger. And what I mean is this. Democracy and freedom are not the same thing. So if you are putting all your legal policy questions to the people in plebiscites and referenda, then whatever the majority says is the law. All the time. Because that's the principle. So for example, if during COVID, these policy questions, these COVID policy questions had been put to the people in a plebiscite, do you think that people should be required to get a vaccine? If 60% of the people say yes, the law is you must get a vaccine. There are no rights. You don't go to a court. You can't ask a court to say that's not right. You can't exercise your own medical decisions because you have direct democracy. That's what it means. And so here's the mistake. To speak about a free people as a collective and free people as individuals are two completely different ideas. A free people think a people is free if they have democracy. Now, don't get me wrong, democracy is good. It's better than the alternatives. But a free people who have democracy do not make free individuals. Free individuals are free from force. Force is one of the things that the majority can decide to impose upon you. Okay, so you do not want governance by referenda. Now, don't get me wrong, there are moments like the one that we're in right now. So for big governance questions about whether or not you want to be a country, what kind of constitution you want to have, and so on, well, of course. But once you are into the system of governance, you want to be free people. And if your fellows get to say what you have to do, then you are not free. Let me put it this way. Our problem is not bad policy. Don't get me wrong, we got a lot of bad policy. But the problem is not bad policy. The problem is the existence of policy. The problem is that we have people with the power to make policy. And we all want to argue about what the policy says. What's the content of the policy? Is the policy actually in the common good? Well, it's not because you didn't follow the science, or you did it this way, or it doesn't produce good outcomes. That's beside the point. The point is, you've got people ruling over you with the power to tell you what to do. That's what policy is. Don't fix the policy, fix the Constitution.
This is an area where the three of us largely agree. We have different reasoning and different perspectives, but I agree with what's been said by Matt and Bruce. Democracy in some respects is tyranny of the majority over the minority. And we have to be very, very careful with that. Now, to be clear, the Swiss model is not one of them voting on, what the fines on parking be. It is on big questions, material questions, and relatively few questions. And I would add one more commentary, is there are things around operating a large organization like a nation that are highly complex. I wrote the Value of Freedom document, did the analytics on there. I still don't sometimes be able to refer on anything in there without going back to the document. It took me weeks of analysis and study and understanding to sort it out. And reducing that to a simple yes/no question or option 1, 2, 3 question is impossible. We'd have to give you like 700 questions and take off option 1, 2, 3 for all of them, and it still would be inferior because option A doesn't work with option B. So I think referenda is a good thing, but in very limited places. The one I think we all agree with, you want to modify the Constitution, you want to add some new power to government, you want to change things in a material way, it absolutely must be, every time, all the time, the will of the people and nothing else.
Several of you asked a similar question here around property rights and rights. So I'll just ask the one major one here. Can we have true property rights, including mineral rights, no ability for loss of property, property taxes, castle law? In the case of annex, fair market value is given to landowner. We need enshrined rights for speech and protection from harm. We need limits on immigration tied to services, housing, availability, and merit. It's a very large one, but we'll go and start with Matt on that.
So the right to property is not given to you by the government. It's yours. And nobody has the right to take it away from you. This was one of the principles of Runnymede, of Magna Carta. Even the king is under the law, and even the king can't just decide that he likes your land and come in and take it. We do recognize that there's a principle called eminent domain, where at times, again, in order to do large projects, say you want to run a power transmission line, you have 6 guys in a line that are willing to sell you their land, but one guy says, nope, over my dead body, you can't have your power transmission line. kind of like what happens right now with pipelines and other things. We recognize there's times when the government, for the good of the Commonwealth, that's an area where Bruce and I disagree, says we must exercise eminent domain, but we must compensate you fairly for it. And that should be incredibly limited and extraordinary. And that actually comes down to culture. It should be shocking if they have to do it. And everyone should be able to say, you know what, fair point, that's a good reason. Rather than just, oh, we're deciding to exercise eminent domain so that we can set up nature preserves because we don't want you drilling for oil. Property is yours. And again, this is an old Westminster principle that nobody in the government has the right to take any of your property without your consent.
So this is one of the things that philosophically Matthew and I agree about, but in terms of constitutions, disagree about. If I understand Matthew correctly, he's making the case that the culture is and should be the thing that protects you.
Here. Yeah. Here.
Cultures do not protect you. That is the experience of today. The culture is not protecting you. That is the problem. And what we need is a constitution that protects you for that reason. Now, the philosophical, cultural preference that Matthew has described is one that I agree with. The government should not, the king should not be able to take your property. But they can.
Yep.
In Canada today, they can do anything they want. That's the point. Your rights are not inalienable legally. Legislatures can do anything they want with respect to your property. Why is that? Well, because there's no property right in the Charter of Rights. We do have statutes in all the provinces across the country that do as Matthew describes, which is if you want to take property through the power of eminent domain, you can confiscate, take title for the purpose of a highway or a pipeline and pay market value in compensation to the person who owned the property. That's what the legislation says. The legislation can be amended because it is within the power of Parliament or provincial legislature to do that. That is the rule only because that's what the statute was passed to say. So if they wanted to change the statute to say, well, in this case, we're taking your property and not paying you compensation, then they could do that. There is no restraint. None. Let's talk about rights for a minute. People think that the Constitution should list lots of rights. The right to property, the right to freedom of expression, the right to bear arms, and so on and so forth. There's a whole long list. And some people's lists are longer than others. We have a list already in the Canadian Charter of Rights. Those don't work very well. They do not protect you very much because our courts have largely decided that they don't mean what people in this room would like them to mean. Okay? My Constitution lists no rights. Why is that? Because it doesn't need to. Because the default is flipped. The state can do nothing. What is the function of a right? It claims to limit the power of the state. Those are the exceptions. All powerful except. Those are your rights. Your rights are a mere exception to the all-powerful state. And you need those rights to be listed because the state is all-powerful in the Constitution. Flip the default. The state is powerless. That means that everybody is free. No one can use force, including the state, use force or threats of force against you. Your liberty is a single thing. It is a state of being. It includes all the rights you could possibly imagine. Freedom of speech, to bear arms, to property. You can do anything you want without interference from the state. Why? Well, because the state has no power except keep the peace, resolve disputes, protect the country. That is it. You don't need rights. At least not rights that are listed and you go to a court to beg them to enforce. You have a constitutional architecture that means that these things cannot be done.
I want to come at this for a little different direction. So, I mean, it sounds like when Bruce and I talk, or Matt and Bruce and I talk, that we're really, really far apart, and that, you know, there's this model way over there, there's a model way over there. It's actually not as bad as that. Because the constitutional model that I espouse, the Republican model, it presumes that when people talk about it, they think, well, the rights will be listed as they are in Canada today. And there is no way on God's green earth anything like the text in the current charter will ever find a place in any constitution I support.
Here, here.
The problem with the rights today in Canada is there's outs for the government. The rights apply except for in the interest of the public good, except for this reason. Well, we can take that language out. We remove it completely. And we list the rights we want. I actually think there's some familiarity to people that they can say, hey, I clearly see my right for speech, my right to property, my right to firearms, my right for self-determination, all that good stuff. And you know what? At the end we say, and there will be no more rights except for by constitutional amendment, which is the will of the people by referendum. So there are ways to control this. Now, it's a difficult model. I would put to Bruce, okay, you say state has no power except for, let's start drafting that except for list. That's a hard list to draft. I've tried. It's not easy. It's got its challenges too. And I think that's why we have to see all three models, because I ultimately believe if we presented all three in all their glory, Bruce the way he wanted it, Matt the way he wanted it, myself the way I wanted it, we'd say, wait a minute here. These are not super different. They are different models. We have to pick one. We can't pick a slice of this and a piece of that and a helping of that. It's got to be, make a decision. There are things I really like about Bruce's model. It's conceptually elegant. It's simplistic. It's easy to understand. It's also never been tried before. That's a challenge for me. So, and there's problems with Constitution as I write it. I can list them. I went through this stupid thing for weeks. You know, and some days I was pulling my hair out. That's why I got no hair left. And the guts of it is, you start writing these rights and they do get slippery. What's the right language to describe property? What's the right language to describe expropriation? What's the right language to describe freedom of speech? It's very difficult. But I'd also argue that when we try and say, well, government has no power except for, those except fors are also hard to write. And pick on my dear friend Matthew, who I love to bits, when he starts saying, well, we want to have these absolute rights, but you know what? They can evolve over time. They can change over time as the little legislature. That's a challenge too. Because guess what? People sometimes run in flocks. Groups of people do stupid things. Witness Germany in the 30s. How did a nation of smart people, revered by many around the world as the leaders of science, turn into the mess we had in the 40s? That was people legitimately voting in the government, legitimately following the rules, legitimately following the Constitution. That's the challenge. So I would put to all of you, every one of the models we espouse can work, every one of them can fail. The right people, the wrong people, I don't care what kind of people it is. If we the people, the broad people, the everybody, the ones sitting in your home with your kids, are not prepared to be engaged, to help form our culture, to help talk to people, to demand change when things go wrong, it's all useless.
Here, here. Yeah.
And this next one is going to kind of work on that, because This is a very modest question to be asking. Please talk about what we have versus what we could have. Please talk about what the core tenets of our Constitution are, because I don't know. It's all about what we have, and I need more education. So I spoke to this gentleman before, and he literally said, I need more education to understand what we're even doing here. And to be engaged, that's a major part of this. Dennis, let's start with you on that.
I'll make a confession. I mean, I think I said earlier tonight, on December 12th, I had the draft constitution ready. I was a legend in my own shower. I honestly believe I had it right. And then I began to get educated. I started listening to Bruce, started listening to Matthew, started reading. It took a while. It hurt my head. It was difficult. I had to talk with people. Bruce and I met in a restaurant. We spent, how many hours?
Yeah.
Debating, pounding the table. Matt and I had a 4-hour meeting in a different restaurant with Eva Chapaya. And I went off and did a bunch of research. You have to work it. You have to understand. Like what I just said a minute ago around our current set of rights, they aren't a set of rights. They're a set of notions with exceptions for the people in power to change as they will. Do people understand that? Do you know that Pierre Elliott Trudeau changed the basis of government in 1982 from being Parliament, namely the people, the elected representatives supreme, to the courts being supreme? Unelected idiots. Do people know that? I didn't know that in 1982. Oh, we're getting this charter signed. Oh, isn't that cool? Oh, a bunch of politicians smiling, holding hands, taking pictures. I didn't realize it was probably the single worst thing that ever happened to this country. Single worst thing. And we were all there. So you have to learn. Now, I am happy, and I think everyone on this table is happy. You know, if we need to make a video about what are the precepts of a Westminster Constitution, Bruce fills out his, fleshes out his, I flesh out mine. I think that's something that's a good initiative, an education series. I'm going to ask one more thing before I let this go. So I just finished drafting the transition plan for creating the Constitutional Conference. You know what number one thing is in there? An education piece. Well, however we pick the representatives, whoever is there in the room making the decision, we're postulating a 1-month training course on constitutional systems, laws, the effect, history. What's Germany doing? What's Switzerland doing? What happened in Runnymede back when? And then when you're educated, then we can make the decision.
We have long made a constitutional mistake. Very long-standing mistake. It was made originally in England and repeated in America, repeated in Canada. We started a long journey, and they did pretty well in many respects. But let's just go back. You started in England with a king, and lots of different kings, but a king. And the problem was that the king was the law. Whatever the king said was the law. Off with her head. He said that about you, you would lose your head. And they finally decided over a long period of time that that wouldn't do. So what did they do? They took power from the king and they gave it to legislatures. Because legislatures were at least partially elected. You know, power to the people. You're taking power from a tyrant and giving it to the people. Great. Except that over time, they discovered that legislatures could be tyrants too. And so the Americans, when they had the revolution and their second constitution, and then shortly after that, they decided to do something about that, which was to create a Bill of Rights. And the effect of that was to take power from the legislature and give it to the courts. And what has happened since then? Well, both the legislature and the courts have taken the power away from themselves and given it back to the king, but it's not the king anymore who's there. Now it's the deep state. Okay? Here's the mistake that we've made all along. All we have ever done is move power around. From king to legislature to courts to deep state. We have never taken power away. And what I'm suggesting is that is what we have to do. Instead of moving it someplace else or trying a check and a balance that doesn't work, you have to limit the power of the state to act for the common good. Our Constitution is based upon authority. Our legal system, our laws are based upon authority. They're not based upon the truth. They're not based upon consent. They are based upon authority. Peace, order, and good government. It's right in the document.
Here, here.
And the options Matt is advocating for a system, going back to a system of legislative supremacy, which is what the charter destroyed. But keep in mind, okay, so the charter comes along, and I'm no fan of the charter. The charter doesn't work. But what the charter was claiming to do was the same thing that the American Bill of Rights did. It just so happens that our people, our courts, have dealt with our charter in a very different way than American courts have dealt with their Bill of Rights. Their Bill of Rights is much better, much more robust. And yeah, our charter is drafted badly. We have Section 1 and so on. But nevertheless, the idea was the same. The Charter of Rights was supposed to protect you against the legislatures that were turning into tyrants. So you have legislative supremacy as one choice, and the other bad choice being judicial supremacy, which in our country doesn't work. My point is, both those choices are bad. You don't want a supreme leader. You want to be free.
In the book of Judges, it says there was no king in Israel, and everyone did what was right in their own eyes. Everybody got to have freedom. Oh, it was going to be good. And then the next thing you know, gang rapes are happening, and somebody's cutting a woman up into 12 bits and sending them to the 12 tribes of Israel. And this is actually true through the entire history of the world. Government was not imposed by the deep state at the beginning of time. But in every society throughout the history of the world, throughout all of humanity in all corners of the world, government has had to exist because when you get a group of people together, they have to be led. And they actually do want to be led. It's not about whether government should exist or whether people should just be free to do whatever. It's how that government should operate. And in the Westminster system, we have a 1,000-year tradition of carefully, slowly developing government, growing it like a tree, trimming it where it needs to, pruning it and adjusting it as we need to, but allowing it to grow, prosper, and change with the times, because as times change, constitutions must change as well. One of the problems of a written constitution is that you end up with people looking back and saying, well, 200 years ago they said you should have bear arms, so everybody can have a taxidermied bear, but past that, nothing's good. You know, there's all this debate down in the States right now about, well, that's only if you have a flintlock musket, because that's what they meant back then. You need actually to have change and adjustment in the way government works. And what happened in Canada that did break it, I agree, was we shifted away from a long-standing process where the people of Canada, with checks and balances, with a Senate that should slow down the process and make people think before they do stupid things, with a crown off there in the distance with reserved powers to make sure that if something goes really wrong, they can say, time out, you're not doing that. We decided that wasn't good because Pierre Trudeau came along like the Pied Piper. And he played us a little tune called the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. You'll get your rights. And then the courts will decide what you'll get. Before that, we can actually look at Canada and say, you know what, it did actually function pretty well. We were actually able to get governments that we broadly agreed with, or at least that weren't trying to drive us off a cliff full speed. But then Pierre Trudeau changed it. The tradition that we have is one that has been developed carefully, slowly, and thoughtfully. And I always say that before you go to change something, you should understand it, you should respect it, and then you can move forward with adjustments. That's a true conservative principle. The modern progressive principle is, it's all bad, let's burn it down and start again. The only problem is once you burn the house down, you got nothing left to fix.
All right, so we had, was that insurance problem?
Insurance claim.
Yeah, that's quite the claim for sure. Maybe underwater too. Burn it while it's underwater. We have several questions about this one, so we'll get into it now. It's about God, and where does God fit into the Constitution? And there's also a question here about whether or not certain religions can be barred or banned based off of barbaric activities that happen within it. So in a broad sense, what's the role of God, and is there a certain religion that should be picked over others? Bruce?
You want me to go first on that question? All right. I don't think that religious beliefs have any role in the Constitution. I don't think any religion should be banned. Here's what needs to be banned. Force and threats of force. So, let's try this. If you have two adults of sound mind on their own property, and let's say the grapes are closed, if those two adults consent, is there anything that you think the law should not allow them to do? It does not affect you. It does not affect anybody else. Nothing is going outside the house. They're not online. They are in their own room. They both fully consent to whatever it is that's going on. You can imagine something as bad as you like. Do you think that there is any law that should prevent them from doing whatever it is that they're doing? And if you think that the answer is yes, then you do not want those two people to be free. Because nobody is using force without consent. Nobody. What you are doing instead is deciding that your moral code must govern other people. And that is not a free country. That is a country where the majority rules. And be careful, because you might not end up being in the majority. In fact, I'll bet right now in Canada as a whole, you are not. So, I've got no problem with God, and no problem with religions, and no problem acknowledging the fact that this civilization was built on a Christian conception, largely. Certainly a Judeo-Christian conception and set of values. No problem. That is true. But the value and principle that I think society must be based upon, because what you have now is a pluralist society. It might not be what you want. It might not be what you like. It's what you've got. And that's not going to be changing. So, in order for us all to live together in peace and in liberty, everybody must be governed by the same idea, which is you cannot interfere with other people. And otherwise, your values are yours.
Go to Dennis.
I'm not going to get into what goes on behind anyone's closed graves. Mind boggles. I have a good imagination. But anyway, so I'm going to take it down a little bit different route, and that is that I think we have to recognize our Western civilizations were based upon those Judeo-Christian principles that Bruce referred to, and I think are structurally there. And you don't have to be religious to understand them. You don't have to be religious to agree they're a good set of principles. So as far as that goes, I don't think any religion should be baked into a constitution. I do believe it should be acknowledged that the principles in the Constitution grew out of those principles in Judeo-Christian culture. I think that's fair enough. But I also fear a couple things. I fear theocracies. That's the one form of government that scares me more than any other, because it is a means where they have the power and they have the ideology to justify anything they want. So I've said for many years, I don't want Christian political parties. I want Christians in politics. I want them pushing their thoughts and their views. So I think we have to protect the fact that people should be allowed to worship in their own way. We also have to protect the fact that, as Bruce said, in a pluralistic society, you have to protect people from religion. It shouldn't be imposed. You shouldn't be forced to go to a particular church. You shouldn't be forced to behave a particular way. And as for banning religions, any religion that says, we will force you to do certain things, we require, women to wear certain dress or men to have certain behavior, I think that is, and this is where I agree with Bruce, that is behavior that must be stopped. You shouldn't require anybody to do those things. Now, as long as you don't do those kind of things, fine, practice your religion as you will. But I don't think that's where it stopped. It's just say, practice your religion as you will, and stay free from religion, if you will. And that's where I'll end this.
All law is a moral statement. You can or you cannot do this thing because it is good or it is bad. Our society was built on Christian values. That's what Western society is. And those values include things that aren't universal in the world, and in fact weren't universal in Christendom before Christ came along. The value of women, the value of those who are lesser, the value of people like slaves who are considered to be lesser. Though the change in the value of who people was, the development of even the concept of rights and responsibility in our world flowed from a place of belief. Everybody lives from their belief. There is no such thing as a secular person, because we all believe something, even if it's that I believe nothing. And that will drive us in one direction or another. But we cannot become a theocracy. The Western tradition is we have to leave room for those who are of a minority belief or a minority value, so long as they do not go against or harm, as we talked about, those in the society or even among their own group, right? So there are practices that are welcomed and okay in certain other corners of the world. Perfectly legal, perfectly lawful, even required. And here in Alberta, we say, no, you can't do that here, simply. And freedom, there is a limit to freedom. I will point this out again, even if it's something that I believe, right? There are parades that go on right now where people exercise their freedom. We just saw one recently. And they assault everybody else around them with their freedom. No, they haven't done violence to somebody, and yet their freedom has imposed itself on other people. What we do behind our curtains, it may not affect people because they're not present, but it does twist a society in certain directions. So we have to be careful before we say anything goes. We also have to be careful before we prescribe belief or we prescribe a religious standard that is so strict that it causes other people who aren't of that religious point of view to have trouble. Famously, in the Commonwealth in England, they limited you to only wearing 2 colors at a time because anything else was ungodly. And by the time they were done, everybody said, you know what, we're done. Let's go back to having a king because this is just ridiculous. The level that they were trying to make people go to. But understand that if you have a society with laws, if you have society with standards, you will have to choose that some things are right and some things are wrong. And that's actually a cultural matter, not a legislative matter, first and foremost.
This next one's always lively. How do we prevent corruption? Should we have Doge? How do we stop nepotism? They're all about the same. How do we prevent cronyism and corruption? Do you assume people are good or bad? Let's start with Matt on that one.
I'm all for nepotism sometimes. You know what? If I know somebody, I'm probably going to go to them quicker than some random stranger off the street who says, hey, I think I can do good at that. Some of these things aren't actually corruption. Where the corruption comes in is the real definition of nepotism, right? You're choosing somebody just because they're blood, not based on whether they can do the job or not. You can't avoid corruption, but you do have to believe that there will be honorable people, and you have to expect that there will be honorable people in government. Why was Trudeau able to get away with what he did, where he violated ethics laws so many times? Because at the end of the day, the majority of Canadians went, what do you expect? He's a politician. They're all corrupt. Well, we call them the honorable so-and-so because there was a time when we believed that you must be honorable and your reputation and your future in the country could be permanently harmed if you chose to be dishonorable in government. And that is what needs to return. Again, it's a matter of us as citizens saying we will not tolerate dishonorable, slimy, lying, despicable people. Now, Bruce did make a good point. Politicians are paid to lie. You may not always get away from them doing it, but we can have standards that mean that we will vote those people out if they do not hold to honor in their positions.
I agree with what Matt said, and I support that, but I have a little bit different perspective as well. Part of the reason why politicians go into power, at least some do, is they want to gain wealth, they want to gain status, they want to gain power. In the view I have, is I want to take that incentive away. Bruce and I agree, we agree on how to do it, but the whole idea about, I don't want long-running politicians who have plenty of time to set up scams, that enrich themselves and their friends. I want to make it short. The solution we have baked in is things like term limits, where you say, okay, you get to serve a certain length of time, and then you're done, and you can never serve again. Now, there's consequences to that. Might lose some good politicians out of that. Might have lost Ralph Klein, to Matt's point. But the reality is, I think the penalty for bad politicians, like Trudeau, is far higher than the loss of a good politician. So that's why I tend to head that way. The other thing is take the financial incentive out. I think all of us agree at this table, we need some financial cap on government. That they can't extract ever more money out of your pocket. And by the way, line their own in the process.
Here, here.
So if we start capping how much government can spend, the proposal we have on the table from the model I espouse is a fixed percentage of previous year's GDP. Say, okay, you got that amount of money, make choices within it. If you want to add some new whiz-bang program, that's fine. Find the money within that pot. You don't get to add more taxes, except for by referendum. That's one that goes to the people. You want to extract more money out of your wallet, more property from you, to Bruce's point, then you better ask the people first. And so I think there's ways through this. But the thing I also believe, one last point, is there has to be consequences.
Yes.
I find it appalling that Trudeau went from a net wealth of the low 20s to 350 million while in office. And thoughts like a fair trial followed by a fair hanging.
Give it to Bruce.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that, but I would like to frame it differently. You can't prosecute somebody for something that's not illegal. And the problem is that the corruption that we are talking about and annoyed by and outraged by is largely legal. It's not really corruption in the legal sense. It's not a criminal offense that these people have committed. We just don't like what they've done. And it's not illegal because they control what the law is. There is a way, in my opinion, to defeat corruption in government. And that is to make sure your government has very little power. There's nothing to corrupt. If your government, for example, has no power to tax, well, then what are they going to be doing? If they have no power to make laws about anything other than this list of things, what are they going to do? There's nothing to conquer. There's nothing to lobby. There's no way to make a fortune. There's no money in it. You will often hear the idea that we have the wrong people in government. We have dishonorable people, and we should choose honorable people. If we only had honorable people, our problems would be solved. Okay, well, if your Constitution requires honorable people, your Constitution does not work. Because you're always going to have dishonorable people. Because everybody's self-interested. Politicians are self-interested. I don't mean that they're all evil. That's not true. But there are enough of them self-interested enough to be controlling the law in a way that allows them to do what they want to do. That system cannot exist. I don't think this is a question of the character of the people. It's a question of the design of the Constitution. If you make it a vehicle where people cannot seize it, and to Dennis's point, Dennis and I agree about this, but I would describe this term limit idea, I think, in a more extreme way than he does. Yes, term limits. My term limits go like this. No one can work for the state in any capacity, cumulatively, for longer, you pick a random number, or say 6 or 8 years. Let's go with 8. No one can work for the state in any capacity, cumulatively, for longer than 8 years. As a politician, as a bureaucrat, as a judge, as a consultant, as a supplier, as an ambassador. In other words, if you run for office and you win twice, you sit for 8 years, great, you're done. You cannot be a judge, you cannot be an ambassador, you can't be the receptionist, you're finished. What you want is a revolving door. And what you are doing is preventing the creation of an entrenched ruling class. There is no deep state. There's nobody there with an entrenched interest. You're not there long enough to want to build an empire. What's the point? You get in, you serve, and you get out. And when you're in there, you'll be paid the median provincial wage. Why? Well, it's because you are involved in public service. Not a way to get rich. Not for you. What you want is employment inside the state that nobody wants to do. If you have that, you got something.
So I'm going to nominate Bruce for receptionist.
But only for 8 years.
Well, we'll figure out the next 4 years after that. And each of your constitutions, what's the role of the judiciary?
No, good question.
In each of them, basically they're all the same. And is there accountability for the judiciary? Let's start with Matt, then then Bruce and Dennis.
Judges are important. Again, if you look at the development of the judiciary, the king had the job of judging, but then there's a lot of people to judge. So judges on behalf of the king were making judgments. And you could appeal those judgments if you didn't like the way the judgment was, up all the way to the king or the lords, as the case may be. Judges have a place, but their role is to interpret based upon law, to judge a case based upon the law, not to adjudicate the law itself. And this was the Westminster principle. A judge was there to decide whether you and your disputes were right or wrong. They couldn't go and say, oh, I'm sorry, that law is unconstitutional and you may not have it anymore. That was not their role. This is why we didn't have all these crazy dramatic changes that really affected the lives of people until Trudeau's charter could come in and the judges could come in and say, oh, I'm sorry, you can't have an abortion law anymore. Oh, actually, everybody does have the right to kill themselves, even the 13-year-olds and the mental patients, because even though the majority of people say that's a bad idea, we've decided it's unconstitutional. It's now unconstitutional to have a mandatory minimum sentence for a child rapist because some judge decided it, because they get to adjudicate whether a law is right or not. So in a healthy Westminster system, they judge based on the law, but they do not judge the laws themselves.
Matthew's description of the proper role of a judge, I agree with. It is a role of restraint. It is a role limited to interpreting the words of the law and applying them to cases. I think that is correct. Here's the problem. Saying that doesn't make it so. We have judges today who will not restrict themselves in that way. The fact of the matter is, and here's one of the paradoxes, courts are part of the state. But courts are also given the job of restraining the state. Okay? Well, now you've got the state restraining itself. This idea called the rule of law is just an idea, by the way. And the idea is based upon and dependent upon self-restraint. Self-restraint of judges, self-restraint of legislators, and of bureaucrats. And here's the problem. The people who now populate these offices, including the bench, do not believe in that restraint. And so we have a constitutional problem. How do you design it so that the people who are in these offices are restrained from what they can do? Here's what I've proposed. Number one, you elect the judges. Now that on its own is no panacea, because there are problems with that as well. Right? But those judges are on as short a leash in terms of their tenure as everybody else. 8 years. Maybe 4 as a judge and 4 as something else, but 8 if that's what you want to spend your time doing. But let's add these things in. Number one, we want to diffuse the power of each judge to dictate to the rest of us what the law is. This is part of the restraint that Matthew's describing. How do we make them do that? Because they don't want to. Well, first, you get rid, this is going to sound counterintuitive perhaps, you get rid of the idea of precedent.
Yeah.
Precedent sounds like a good idea. I believed in precedent for years. The doctrine of precedent. The doctrine of precedent suggests that like cases should be decided alike. Consistency in the law. That's a very good idea. It's part of the rule of law. But here's the problem. We have the doctrine of precedent, and yet we do not have consistent decisions. It doesn't work, because judges always find a way around the precedent. And at the same time, we have a highest court, Supreme Court of Canada, with the power of precedent over the rest of the courts. And so here's what happens. Supreme Court of Canada gets a constitutional case. They take a phrase in the charter or somewhere else and they say, oh, we're taking these words and it's going to mean this. Now their interpretation now binds the rest of the courts. And this court, the Supreme Court of Canada, now controls the meaning of the Constitution. And they change the meaning of the Constitution for all of us. It's like having an amendment without an amendment. Okay? They become a star chamber. So you can't have them with the power of precedent. You have to take that away. And then you add in other things, like when you're going to have a trial, you're going to have a panel, this is my suggestion, you have a panel of 2 elected judges with judges selected for those cases in both a random and transparent way. What happens right now, we think, because it's not transparent, somebody behind the scenes is deciding which judge will sit on which case. And that selection makes a huge difference to the outcome. Okay? So this process of assigning judges has to be open and transparent and random. And those 2 judges on the panel for a trial must agree in order for someone to be convicted or found liable. And then same thing at the appeal level. Only 2 levels of court. Appeal level, 3 judges on a panel. Those 3 judges must agree for the appeal to succeed. In other words, you are trying to make each judge in the system far less powerful than they are right now. So you get closer to the kind of approach that Matthew was describing.
We have a lot of agreement at this table on this topic, and the last thing we want is activist judges running around interpreting constitutions. And a couple of things come to mind about this. The question of elected judges or appointed judges, there's strengths and weaknesses for each one. It's not a popularity contest. I want legal capability and good thinking in my judges. Us average folks are not always ideal for picking that out of a crowd of judges, so there's weaknesses in that. But appointments, the problem with appointments is who does the appointing. And I tend also to think of the American system where there's a recommendation, we make Matt a judge, but then there's a grilling done by their Senate, where it's a public grilling, it's a public flogging sometimes. And yeah, it gets into a media circus, as Matt suggests, but I think there is merit to that, and it's certainly an option I would consider to say, we want to have qualified people check out the judges, not for ideological purity, but for competence and for their ability to adjudicate properly. As for the court system Bruce described, I'm okay with that. I don't want 19 levels of courts. I don't want some process that the Star Chamber decides, well, Bruce will really adjudicate it in a good way for this case, so this is the way we can stop the petition from being counted, by picking this idiot judge. So I think the approach that he suggested is well within range of my own thinking. As for precedent, I tend to be on that side, Bruce's side. I think that we should not be locked in by precedent. A decision made 150 years ago, totally different world, totally different circumstance, doesn't have to lock in the decision of today, but they should be required to consider it in their thinking and their discussion. They should be, and not just consultants like we talk about consulting the Aboriginal people. No, a serious consideration. Why was it done that way? What did it mean? What was the circumstance? What's different in this case versus other ones? So I think if we have that serious consideration for precedent, but without binding ourselves to it, I can live with that answer.
Well, I set precedents yesterday that we end at 9, so I'm going to make that binding. We're getting close to the end here, folks. Now, if your question didn't come up, don't worry. They're all being collected and passed on to all the gentlemen. So if we didn't actually cover yours, they will still take a look at it and put it into the noggin, make a mature decision or change your mind as well there, Dennis, sometimes. Mature your thinking, I think is the way you put it yesterday. The next one is a really big one to a lot of people. What are the guardrails against the globalist taking over again? How do we ban global organizations like the WHO, WEF, UN, etc.? Let's start with Matt.
Again, there's use for certain organizations globally. Right now we're watching the World Cup. Great, have the World Cup. Things like the WHO, the WEF, people who want power over our politicians, or who say that they can control them, and who offer some sort of incentive for our politicians to follow in their path, are existentially dangerous to us. And no, you should not be able to be part of those type of international bodies. I have no problem with international trade treaties, even international defense alliances. That's always been around. But these progressive organizations that are seeking to change culture and values are where the problem comes in. So we cannot stop our politicians from making treaties. It's part of the job, actually, of government is to make treaties. But again, we should not tolerate those that would think that things like the WEF or the WHO are a good idea. That's, again, your job as the people of Alberta to say to your politicians, are you joking? No, you can't. And we've seen it actually in Canada right now, that WEF membership, at least in Alberta, has gone from being something that everyone wants to be a young influencer there to, oh, well, I don't want to have anything to do with that place. Why? Because we spoke and we said, no, we don't like people who have the same values as that. And that's our role to stop people from getting involved in those things.
I think it's the Constitution's job to prevent people from getting involved in those things. And this is what I mean. I don't mean that they can't go and become an influencer with the WEF. I mean, I don't care what they do. But the problem is, as Matthew has just described, the problem is actually not the global groups. It's the fact that our own people are taking up the corruption that they are offering. The solution is this. Again, I hate to harp on a theme, but you can't become corrupt if you have no power. The WEF is not going to be interested in anybody who's in government in Alberta, at least if we get the Constitution that I would like to see. They're not going to be interested in them. They have no power. What's the point? It's a waste of time. If you're an Albertan parliamentarian and you yearn to be an important person in the WEF, like it's going to be very hard to get in. They're not going to be interested in you because you have no power. At the cabinet table, what does cabinet do? 1, 2, 3. That's all, sorry. There's no policy to make. There's no taxes to collect. There's no speech to infringe. You can't do it. The Constitution doesn't give you the power. You're not going to be a person of interest to them. The WHO is involved in activity that the government of Alberta has no power to participate in. You've taken the power of public health away from the state in Alberta. They can't do it. One of the tests for whether or not Alberta's future constitution is a good one is this. If we had COVID again, would you be able to run the same COVID rules? The answer's got to be no. And I'm afraid under nearly any other model, the answer is yes. As long as the government has the power to provide for the common good, the general welfare, the safety of its citizens, you will get, or will be able to get, COVID again. That has to be beyond the powers of the government to do. And if it is, the WHO is not interested, the WEF is not interested, the UN is not interested. You can't take citizens' money and give it away to the UN. There's no power to do that. It can't be done. So, you can participate as an individual all you like, but it's got nothing to do with the way Alberta is governed.
That's the first time COVID and test was in the same sentence, and I nodded.
So, this is a place where Bruce and I are in violent agreement. In that this is a place where there should be no force from any international organization on any law, operation, or procedure in the country of Alberta. It is prohibited. If we want to adopt a good law that happened to be invented by the WF, it's a decision made in Alberta by the Alberta legislature, subject to the Alberta Constitution, and only then can it be put into force. So the crap I see right now, we'll follow the protocol of the WF for pandemics. That to me is abdicating our responsibility, and that should never, ever, ever be allowed. That is allowing external nations to apply force to our nation. And that's where Bruce and I agree. That force must always be prohibited, and our politicians should be prohibited from using that to govern this country.
All right, so as we wrap up here, I've got 3 questions for the individual men. So this is just to be directed to one person. Dennis, is there another successful country who has a constitution that we can use as a draft? Would this be an advantage or not?
So I got asked that last night, I think, which constitution do I like? The short answer, I don't like any of them. They all have strengths and weaknesses. So, but the draft I put together is to pull in a number of elements from other places. There's some good ideas out there. They've been pulled in already. There's some of the referendum ideas from the Swiss model, some of the basic law from the German model, a lot from the American model, and of course some stuff here made in Alberta. So short answer is, I think we can do it better by building though on the knowledge of those other nations and applying it to ourselves. And I think that is a way we can get an improvement on the past.
Matt, it's a hot seat one for you. If we went with a constitutional monarchy, it went wrong before with Pierre in the 80s. How do we expect the next round to be different?
We have the ability to go back and see where it went right. I always use the analogy. When your car breaks down, do you look at it and say, well, cars are clearly a thing of the past, let's get a horse? No, you fix the car, because an automobile is still a good form of transportation. We can see in the not so distant past when our form of government worked well, where it was responsive to people, where it was not controlled by a bunch of activist judges, where Pierre Trudeau's dirty, rotten Charter of Rights and Freedoms could not be used to steal your rights and your freedoms. So rather than saying, let's rebuild everything, or well, it didn't work before, so it won't work again, let's go back and see what went wrong. Oh, we allowed a populist person to ride a wave of Trudeau mania right into office and then make a bunch of dumb decisions and camouflage them. He only got away with the charter because we weren't educated enough. Like Bruce said, everyone went, oh, a charter, that sounds like a good idea. I love rights, I love freedoms. We got to be aware that there are people who will be willing to twist and take control of our form of government, and we have to resist it by having a respect and a knowledge of what we have and how it should remain.
And maybe don't allow a third Trudeau to get in there. But it comes to, that's the one exception, right, by name. So for Bruce, there's a couple here, but they kind of all relate.
Okay.
So in Bruce's model, could there be a situation where one person's rights conflict with another person's? And if so, how do they handle that? Could you describe life in your constitution? Basically the same thing.
Okay.
And then, Bruce, I love your ideas and true freedom. Do you think Albertans are ready for the personal responsibilities that come with true freedom?
Okay. Yeah, thanks. Give that to the Ontario guy. On that last question, look, I don't know. You would know as well as I do. Some people, a lot of people, I think the answer is yes. Some people, the answer is going to be no. Too bad. Too bad. We're trying to describe a situation where your only obligation is not to interfere with other people. If you can't do that, sorry, what are we supposed to say?
Move to Ontario.
Move to Ontario. Very good. They'd probably be more at home there. Let's talk about rights for a minute, because that's part of the question. what are the boundaries of rights? And I want to correct an approach that you will often hear, which is, yes, you have rights, but they are not absolute. And that is true. Rights are not absolute. But the limit to the right is often held to be when it interferes with the common good. That is not true, or at least it shouldn't be true. In other words, they say it's a process of balancing things. You balance the rights and the common good. That's baloney. Here's how rights are supposed to work in my books. The limit to your right is where it interferes with somebody else's right. So let me give you an example. Let's say you have a bike. It's yours. You have the property interests in it. And therefore, you have the right to do with it whatever you want. You can sell it, you can destroy it, you can ride it, you can do whatever you want. But you cannot ride it down the sidewalk into other people, because those people have the right to be free from your force. Okay? That's a situation where you might say, well, there's a conflict between the rights. There actually isn't a conflict between the rights, because you are exercising the rights that you think you have over the bike in a way that is violating the rights of other people. Now, you might get a situation where you think, okay, so which right trumps in this situation? But I think my experience has been in the most situations, that is not a problem, just like in the situation that I described. Okay? But do not accept the other version of things, which is, well, yes, you have freedom of speech until it infringes the common good. If that's true, you don't have a right to free speech. And the courts love, and governments too, love to play the language of balancing rights and the common good. If you see that, that means they are distinct, they're setting aside your right in pursuit of this amorphous thing called the common good.
All right, so we're going to do our final comments here. So we'll start with Dennis. And Dennis, I am shocked you didn't get your 3-story chicken coop into the conversation today.
I'll try and leave that one out tonight. I really appreciate all you guys coming out. You took hours of your time to come here, listen to us 3 guys talk and exchange ideas and argue amongst each other and so forth, and you were very patient. And what I really hope happened is that we gave you a bit more insight into the complexity of this particular problem. And that's great, and I love you all for it, and it's super. But it comes to an obligation. The problem is we have many more people who aren't here tonight, who don't understand these factors, who need to be educated and helped along. Hopefully tonight we're able to give you a bit of insight. So when you talk to your friends, to your family, to your adversaries, the people who don't agree with you, say, yeah, but there are approaches. Here's how we're dealing with this. We got 3 good models. They got some pros and cons, but we understand them better. So we can help sell the idea that in a future Alberta, we will be well governed. We will have a fair society. We will have freedom as far as we can possibly get it. And we will also have democracy. And that will make a nation that will be successful. So that's your job. We'll continue to talk. You also continue to talk. And have a lovely night.
All right, Matt, your last chance to convince them we need Burger King and Dairy Queen. Go ahead.
I support both those ministries and Wendy's above all. I ate Wendy's for a whole year for lunch every business day for one time, and I didn't die, so there you go. A little plug for Wendy. What I would encourage you all, first of all, is to keep doing what you're doing. Thank you so much for participating in the life of Alberta and caring enough about other people that you're going to take an evening to sit here and think and dwell on what we're talking about, to ask good questions, to make good suggestions. Keep it up. I would encourage you to remember that you need to respect and understand the past and where we've come from before you reject something. There are things that do need to be changed in our country now. There are things that we see that are broken and cannot be fixed in this current Constitution. But that doesn't mean that the entire country or the entire history of the country is hopeless. Look to those things that are good. Look to the things that are right and work well. And build on those things to make something better for our kids and grandkids than what we have now. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, I do believe. And we need to do all that we can to make it a successful opportunity.
So then, Bruce, let's explain to them why we don't listen to Ontarians, except Bruce.
That was very well said. Thank you all for coming. The questions were terrific. Really, really very good. So good on you. I want to thank Jason and Paula for putting this together. And for inviting us to do it. And I love you two guys, and I really enjoy talking to them. I learn a lot every time that I do. So thanks to the two of you. I want to end with this. You may be familiar with Lord Acton's famous quote, the one that's always cited, which goes, "Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely." And usually people focus on the second part. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And they think, well, yeah, it makes sense, right? So we can't have absolute power. It seems obvious. But people often look over the first part. And the first part was, power corrupts. Power corrupts. And if you take that seriously, that means you can't have people with power. Now, that's a big ask. How are you going to have a governing system with people without power? Now, that may be impossible to do purely. There's always going to be some power somewhere in a system of governance. You need somebody to enforce the law. But the objective is to get as close as you can to avoiding Lord Acton's warning that power corrupts as little power as possible in as few hands as possible. That is the objective. Thanks for coming.
If someone is off-grid, we watch our power very closely. I want to thank the volunteers for tonight. Without you all, this wouldn't be possible. Thank you so much. I do want to tip my hat to the venue. These conversations, you'd be shocked. It's hard to get venues that will allow it to happen. So thank you to the Westerner. These three guys who kept referring to them as friends and excluded me the entire time. I did take note, but I consider them friends as well. I do also want to thank my family, my wife and my two boys. Without them, this isn't possible, or something that we do. And then all of you, when we're seeing these little emails pop in and, hey, there's another person who's interested in having some public input and coming to our events, we're touched. So thank you very much for being here. We love you all very, very much, and God bless.